the Executive Director of Strategic Communications and Government Relations. So the Board of Regents had a special meeting, and they signed a severance package with Dr. Sloan dated October 29th. The meeting was held October 30th. The Board of Regents met on October 30th to approve a signed document with Dr. Sloan dated October 29th. Dr. Sloan leaves with $152,000 remaining on his contract. So I guess the first question is, who signed the contract that was in effect for slightly more than a month before he was terminated? And why was he terminated within a very short period of signing a new contract? That's a very good question that we would like to get an answer to. He had $15,000 of unused vacation time and $49,000 of unused sick leave. Now that's strange, because I've been told that Del Mar College doesn't pay unused sick leave. So there's a conflict there in information that I have received and what's written in Dr. Sloan's severance agreement. Seems strange, but he's been there 24 years. He doesn't seem to know why he was terminated, and he was apparently escorted out of his office on October the 7th, which, after 24 years of service. Very interesting. So next, we're going to look at some of the language in the severance agreement. This one seems strange. It's in section 6. Therefore, neither the entering into this full and final release, nor any language or terms herein is to be construed as any admission of the truth of any allegations asserted by Sloan, if any, or of any liability whatsoever, all of which have been and continue to be expressly denied. Now, those are words out of the severance agreement. What in the world are they referring to? And what are we paying for, we the taxpayers? That seems to indicate something was going on verbally that we would sure like to know what it was. Seems like an awful lot of money is being spent. This almost seems like it's being spent to silence something. Can't tell for certain. We sure would like to know. Okay, so let's look at Del Mar College statistics. As we are all aware, Del Mar is spending an absolute fortune to educate students. But it appears the education of the students is becoming less and less of a focus. Since in the year 2000, Del Mar College had 3,128 full-time students. In 2014, Del Mar College had 2,831 full-time students. Now the part-time students in 2000 was 6,555, compared to 2014, 14 years later, of 7,608. However, there's 1,416 dual credit students included in that number. So, if we compare what would be apples to apples, the total students on campus in the year 2000 equaled 9,683, compared to 14 years later, 9,023 students. Now, the source of these numbers is the Higher Education Accountability System. So, these were reported presumably by Del Mar College to that organization. So, in 14 years, we've declined 600 students. Over 600 students. Gosh, that's a big number with all the money we've spent. And speaking of money, let's see what came in for the revenues minus the expenses for the fiscal year 2015. It appears, based on the preliminary financial reports that have been issued, if we look at the management discussion and analysis, looks like page 33 of the financial statements, it shows that we had total revenues, Del Mar College, $111 million. Total expenses, $101,719,000. Contributions from other agencies, $151,000. So the increase in the net position, that would be the revenues minus the expenses for the fiscal year ended 2015, was $9,450,000. Now, we did have an accounting entry that was the cumulative effect of change in accounting principles, absolutely a non-cash entry of $10,472,000. However, the fact is the revenues exceeded the expenses again this year, 2015, by $9,450,000. That seems to be consistent with prior years. And in prior years, we can go back to fiscal 13, where the revenues exceeded the expenses by $11,281,000. Fiscal 14, the revenues exceeded the expenses by $10,428,000. And if we go back further, we know that there were 8-digit years several times prior to that. And basically, we'll have to recompute the numbers, but basically somewhere between $65 and $70 million of excess revenue over expenses since 2004. During that period, the administration, of course, told the workers, the employees, that no money was available for raises for an extended period, I believe 5 years. So while the college was collecting tens of millions of dollars in revenue in excess of expenses, the employees were being told the college had no money for raises. And in fact, they received no raises. And in addition to that, a lot of the college staff in the custodial area, the groundskeeping area, were terminated. After decades of experience, some of these people were terminated weeks before retirement in favor of hiring an outside contractor out of Ohio or Indiana, somewhere out there, $4 million a year. Now, I have obtained the calculation of the cost savings, and it's like so many other calculations I've gotten from the college under Public Information Act request. It's not very detailed and very difficult to understand, and based on the numbers that I've seen representing payments to the employees, it makes pretty much no sense. So, how could they save over $400,000 when they spend $1 million for the contract service? Don't know. Those employees didn't make much money. They were averaging around $25,000, $30,000 apiece per year. Now, of course, they're unemployed, and the contractor is hiring minimum wage people, part-time. It's not the same thing. And why was it done? We heard it was done because the college didn't have any money. We see in the financial statements the college had a tremendous amount more in revenue than they had in expenses for an extensive period of time. So, how can we reconcile the verbal statements of the college administration to the financial statements published by the college administration? It's very difficult. Whenever you have two statements and they're mutually exclusive, at least one of them probably isn't true. We'll have to see. I can't reconcile them, or I have not been able to. Thank you.
every area in America suffers from, it's very difficult on twice that to survive. So the lack of education at the primary and secondary level, the resulting community college strains on the community college to provide the education that was not provided by CCISD. Now, it was certainly paid for. We're being taxed for it. But it wasn't provided. So now Del Mar has to make up for a huge amount of that difference. And those that don't go on to Del Mar, those that drop out of high school, are destined for poverty. Bachelor's degree, 20.8%. That's why we're one of the least educated cities in America. And that is also why our average household income is deplorable. Del Mar, they're struggling. They've lost students. From the year 2000, when you exclude the dual credit students, their enrollment has not increased in the last 15 years. Their graduation rate, 10%. Their transfer out rate, 8%. Full-time enrollment, right at 3,000 students. Not very good for a city with 320,000 residents. Let's look at some of the actual enrollment figures. Del Mar in 1999 had 9,688 students. In 2010, they had 10,676 students. So in over a decade, they increased by 1,000 students, about 10%. Now, it has not increased since then. It has probably decreased. And if you exclude the dual purpose, the dual credit students, it has certainly decreased. Contact hours, that's quoted a lot. Contact hours in 2004-2005 at Del Mar, 5.6 million. Okay, how's that compare to 2014-15? 4.8 million. Huge decrease. So we've got a decrease in the contact hours, an effective decrease in enrollment. In fact, we have a decrease in enrollment from fall 2008 to fall 2014 of 7.3% at Del Mar. A decrease in enrollment from fall 2011 to 2014 of 13.2%. These are huge decreases in enrollment in a city that is undereducated in a time that these students absolutely require an education. So, as many of us know, the college just lost their 24-year employee, Vice President Dr. Lee Sloan. We don't know why. Apparently he doesn't know why, or at least that's what he told the Caller Times. So, why did he leave? And why did he leave abruptly? And why did he get paid over $200,000 to do so? He said he was escorted out of his office. I believe him. Why was that? He indicated that he didn't know. We should know. We need to know. What's going on out there? That man's been there 24 years. Now, I've been reviewing financial statements that he's been responsible for, and I can't correlate the fact that he says, or he has said, through the actions at Del Mar, that no money was available for raises for a period of almost 5 years. When during that time, revenues collected exceeded operating expenses in at least 3 of those years by more than $10 million a year. How can that result in no money available for raises? I can't make that correlation. Now, we've gone through those financial statements in the past, and over a period of about 11 years, the assets minus the liabilities, which is normally referred to as equity, not in a not-for-profit though, that figure increased by some $68 million over that period of time. Now, I did notice that the college made the very wise decision to replace Dr. Sloan, who has an EED, with what we can find is no accounting experience, no accounting courses. They replaced him with another EED that happens to also be a CPA. In my opinion, an extremely wise decision. So, they've issued some preliminary financial statements since the departure of Dr. Sloan, and the new CPA assisted in writing these financial statements. So let's review what we're seeing here. What I call equity, the assets minus liabilities, would have gone up again this year by almost $10 million, with the one exception that they had a restatement. They had prior period adjustments for a FASB that was required. So it wasn't a current year operating expense, but it was an adjustment for prior years. And that adjustment was $11 million. That resulted in the assets minus the liabilities decreasing from $117 million to $116 million. Now, the effect of that change from prior periods, if we exclude that, the equity, assets minus liabilities, would have again increased by approximately $10 million, which means, to me, that the budget that was adopted a year ago missed it by about 10%. So, again, not even close. When I look at the changes in the balance sheet, I do notice that buildings and improvements increased by a little over $10 million. So, we're building, we bought 95 acres, and they're clearing them now. I see a caterpillar out there with a blade on it, and a lot of logs pushed around. So they're clearing that space. They've got a sign, coming soon, Delmar. Well, they're coming soon with the new campus is what that means. Why are we building another campus? Our enrollment has declined. In the last 15 years, it has a net actual decline. The contact hours have declined substantially. The dual credit students aren't coming to campus. The teachers are going to the high schools. So there's no need for a physical facility to accommodate them. So administration is building a separate new campus to accommodate the decrease in student population. That doesn't make any sense to me. Just like the budget's being adopted for $10 million a year more than what the expenses were. So the taxpayers are being charged for expenses that aren't being incurred. We're paying it, we're funding it, and they can't spend it on operating expenses in years other than the year it was raised. So it's basically being put into a fund that can be used to construct buildings and new campuses, in addition to that $157 million bond issue that was approved. So it looks as if we had a CFO in the position there for over 5 years. that had a master plan that included building another campus, yet apparently the plan didn't compensate for the fact that the enrollment was declining, the contact hours were declining, the revenue base is going up, and the revenue is going up because of a number of factors, including the budgets that are being adopted by the Board of Regents that are materially inaccurate, to the tune, many times, of $10 million more in revenue adopted than operating expenses. It does make it easy for the regents to manage the business of the college when you have an extra $70 million. Takes away a lot of pressure. Now, the taxpayers who have inadvertently funded that, well, even if they're not aware of it, they're paying for it. Now, some of them have had a problem with that. In fact, there was a lawsuit filed and settled out of court, I believe. Del Mar refunded a little over, I thought it was $2.5 million to a refinery. So they had a problem with that. And the problem evolved around the valuation of their assets, but they wanted their money back. Now, I did notice that the instruction cost in 2015 is $36 million, slightly more than that. In 2014, it was $35 million. That's okay. Remember, the total expenditures are right at $100 million. So it's running in the mid 30%. Student services increased in 2015 by $4 million, from $12.3 million to $16.1 million. What's included in that? Why are these numbers jumping up so high when in fact the student count's declining? Certainly, the contact hours are down, or at least according to the documentation. Should instruction only be a third, or slightly more than a third, of the total expenditures of the college? Should administration be as high as it is? And I can't, from these financial statements, easily discern how much we're spending on administrators, but I can look at the organizational chart and see how the layers have been added to that. And I don't think that the taxpayers wanted to pay taxes to pay an ex-vice president $200,000 plus to retire after what may not have been a stellar job at the vice presidency and CFO position. I know, as a taxpayer, I didn't want to do that. I'm looking at the principal employers in the Del Mar district, and it's always fascinating to me to see that Del Mar has 1,542 employees in 2014. Now, that seems like a lot when you compare it to Texas A&M University Corpus Christi with 991 employees, or Valero Refining, 824 employees. Why so many employees? It seems high. I don't understand that. Again, I look at the organizational chart, expanding, layer after layer, executive after executive. How many executives do we need in any one of those functions to handle the reduced student enrollment? It's not an increase in student enrollment, it's a reduction. Full-time professors, these are 2014 numbers. The 15 numbers aren't yet available. Full-time professors, 282, part-time, 236. It's a little over half are full-time. And that's down from, of course, the peak years in 2010. We had 314 full-time, 304 part-time. 2010, I believe, was the peak year in student enrollment, and it's declined every year since then. In fact, it looks like it was 12,236 students in 2010. It declined in 11 to 12,071, declined in 12 to 11,000, declined in 13 to 10,500, declined in 14 to 10,439. The trend's not good. And again, the second most illiterate city in America, one of the least educated cities in America. Average income, family income, household income of $47,000. 18% of the population living below the poverty level. We in Corpus absolutely need a substantial community college. We need a community college like other cities have, like Houston, Dallas. They have bad educational systems in their primary and secondary schools as well, but they have incredibly good community colleges. The direction of this one is just going the wrong way. Why is that? Well, that answer I don't have. But after 24 years, they escorted the vice president out on, I believe it was October 2nd, replaced him with a qualified person. Is that the only position that needed to be reestablished? No. They brought in Mr. Rivera as the general counsel. Again, what I think is an extremely good move. He's very well educated, could assume any post at that college. Very well qualified. The interim CFO, CPA, that's all you need to say about them, well qualified. The other people, they've been there for years, or in the position of president, he was brought in, I'm not sure, 7 or 8 years ago, and let's look at the results since then. A decline in student enrollment, an increase in the cost structure, the debt per student, that's a good figure. We're among the top in the state of Texas for amount of debt per student. So, if you look at it on a bell curve, we are spending more, incurring more debt, and achieving less than almost all the 50 community college districts in the state of Texas. Those are horrible results in a city that desperately